The scent of lilies and stale grief still clung to the air in our cavernous living room, a grim counterpoint to the harsh sunlight slicing through the bay windows. It had been 3 weeks since Marcus, my brilliant, kind, infuriatingly meticulous husband, had been stolen from me by a sudden, savage heart attack. 3 weeks of a hollow ache in my chest, of phantom touches and conversations that trailed off into silence. And now, this. My sister, Clara, sat opposite me, perched on the edge of one of Marcus's prized antique armchairs. Her usually immaculate blonde hair was slightly frazzled, her designer suit a size too tight, straining across her shoulders. In her arms, swaddled in a hideously bright pink blanket, was a baby. A tiny, scrunched-up, sleeping infant. "Ilara," she began, her voice a strange mix of trepidation and forced bravado. "There's something you need to know. Something Marcus and something we kept from you." I waited, my own grief a leaden weight, making it hard to summon any other emotion. I just wanted her to leave, to let me drown in the silence Marcus had left behind. "This," she gestured with her chin towards the bundle, "is Leo. He's Marcus's son." A beat of silence. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked with ponderous solemnity. Then, a sound I hadn't made in weeks, a sound that felt foreign and rusty in my throat, bubbled up. Laughter. Not a polite chuckle, but a raw, incredulous, almost hysterical laugh that shook my frame. Clara flinched, her blue eyes, so like mine yet so different, widening. "Ilara, this isn't funny, this is serious. Leo is his heir." I wiped a tear from my eye, the laughter dying down into a shaky sigh. "Oh, Clara." I managed, my voice hoarse. "That's rich. Truly, you always did have a flair for the dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," she insisted, her voice rising. "I have a birth certificate. Marcus is listed as the father. We had an affair. It was complicated. He loved you, of course, but we had a connection, and Leo is the result." I stared at her, the absurdity of it all washing over me. An affair? Marcus? The man who catalogued his sock drawer and scheduled spontaneous date nights a month in advance? The man who, above all else, valued honesty and loyalty? It was ludicrous. "And now," Clara continued, pressing her advantage, or so she thought, "with Marcus gone, Leo is entitled to his share of the estate. Legally, as his biological child, he's due half. That's 50 million, Ilara, for his future." The mention of the money, the sheer audacity of the sum, brought a fresh wave of disbelief. Marcus had been incredibly successful, a pioneer in renewable energy technology. His estate was indeed worth a conservative 100 million. And Clara, my perpetually struggling, always chasing the next get-rich-quick scheme sister, was demanding half of it. I leaned back, the ghost of my laughter still playing on my lips. "Clara," I said, my voice dangerously soft, "you can produce 100 birth certificates, you can swear on our mother's grave. It doesn't change one simple, irrefutable fact." She frowned, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "And what's that?" "Marcus couldn't have children, Clara." I let the words hang in the air. "He was sterile." Her face went slack. "What? No, that's not true. He wouldn't have, we wouldn't have." "Oh, it's true," I affirmed, the memory a dull ache, a shared secret between Marcus and me. He had a severe case of mumps as a teenager, complications. We found out years ago, when we first started trying for a family. We saw specialists, explored every option. Nothing. It was a private pain, Clara, one we chose not to share with the world, especially not with family members who have a penchant for gossip and drama. I remembered those early days of our marriage, the hope, then the quiet despair, then the eventual acceptance. We'd mourned the children we'd never have, and then we'd built a different kind of life, filled with travel, with philanthropy, with each other. We'd even discussed adoption, but Marcus had been hesitant, worried he wouldn't be able to love a child that wasn't biologically his as much, a fear I knew was unfounded, but one we were still navigating when he died. Later, after more tests confirmed the initial diagnosis was irreversible, and to ensure there were absolutely no accidents or false hopes, Marcus had undergone a vasectomy. It was a definitive, final step, a line drawn under that chapter of our lives. I had the medical records, locked away with our most important documents. Clara was shaking her head, her face paling. "You're lying. You're just saying that to cut Leo out." "Why would I lie about something so personal, so painful?" I asked, my voice devoid of the earlier amusement, now just weary. "Think about it, Clara. When have you ever known Marcus to be careless? To risk something like an unplanned pregnancy, especially outside of his marriage?" The baby in her arms stirred, letting out a small whimper. Clara automatically rocked him, her eyes darting around the room as if seeking an escape route or, perhaps, an alternative narrative. He might not have known," she stammered, clutching at straws. "Maybe he thought, maybe he hoped." "Clara, we had more doctor's appointments and tests than you've had failed business ventures. He knew, we knew, and to underscore the finality of it all, he had a vasectomy 5 years ago. There are medical records, very clear, very unambiguous medical records." That last piece of information seemed to land like a physical blow. The fight visibly drained out of her, her shoulders slumped. The baby, sensing her distress, began to fuss more loudly. "But the birth certificate," she whispered, defeated. "I paid extra to have his name put on it. The clinic, they said it was possible." "You paid someone to falsify a legal document?" I raised an eyebrow. "Clara, that's fraud, a serious crime." My mind was racing. She wouldn't have concocted this entire scheme on her own, not with such a specific target. She must have known about Marcus's wealth, but to go to these lengths. "Who is the baby's real father, Clara?" I asked, my voice gentle but firm. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but my primary emotion was a profound sadness. Sadness for Marcus, whose memory she was trying to tarnish. Sadness for this innocent child, being used as a pawn. And even a sliver of sadness for my sister, who had clearly hit a new low. She looked down at the baby, her expression a mixture of shame and a strange, twisted sort of desperation. "It doesn't matter. He's just a guy, a mistake." "It matters a great deal, especially when you're trying to extort 50 million using him." I stood up, walking over to the window, looking out at the meticulously kept garden Marcus had loved. "You know, for a moment there, when you walked in, I thought perhaps Marcus had hidden an enormous, life-altering secret from me. And the thought, however brief, was terrifying, because it would have meant our entire life together was a lie." I turned back to face her. "But it wasn't Marcus who was lying, was it? It was you, Clara. It's always you, chasing some illusion, some quick fix, damn the consequences and who you hurt in the process." Tears began to stream down Clara's face, streaking her expensive foundation. "I'm in trouble, Alara, real trouble. I owe people money, dangerous people. I thought this was a way out. Marcus was always so generous." "Generous, yes. A fool, no." I sighed. "And using a baby, your own child, in this way, it's despicable." The word hung in the air. Despicable. It was. My sister, who I had bailed out countless times, who I had tried to guide, to support, despite her increasingly reckless choices, had now orchestrated the most elaborate and hurtful deception of her life. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes fixed on the baby. That was the question, wasn't it? Legally, she had committed fraud, attempted extortion perhaps. I could call the police. I could drag her through the courts, expose her scheme. Part of me, the part that was still raw with grief and incandescent with rage at this violation of Marcus's memory, wanted to do just that. But then there was Leo, this tiny innocent child caught in the crossfire of his mother's greed and desperation. What would happen to him if Clara went to prison? "First," I said, my voice measured, "you are going to tell me everything. The truth, who the father is, who these dangerous people are, everything." And so, she did. The story that unspooled was a sordid, predictable tale of bad investments, mounting debts, and threats from loan sharks. The baby's father was a man she'd had a brief, regrettable fling with, someone long gone from the picture, who likely didn't even know he was a father. The idea to claim Marcus as the father had been a desperate, last-ditch gamble, fueled by the knowledge of his wealth and, crucially, her ignorance of his infertility. She'd found a shady clinic willing to falsify the birth certificate for a hefty sum, money she'd borrowed from yet another questionable source. As she spoke, the anger in me began to morph into a weary resignation. This was Clara, my sister, flawed, broken, and seemingly incapable of learning from her mistakes. "The money you owe," I began slowly. "How much is it?" She named a figure, a significant sum, but a fraction of what she'd been trying to claim from Marcus's estate. "I will help you with that, Clara," I said, and saw a flicker of hope, of relief, in her eyes. "On several conditions." Her head snapped up. "Anything." "Firstly, you will sign a legally binding document drafted by my lawyers, renouncing any and all claims to Marcus's estate on behalf of yourself and Leo. You will acknowledge, in writing, that Marcus is not Leo's father and that the birth certificate was falsified." She nodded vigorously. "Yes, of course." "Secondly, you will get help. Therapy. Financial counseling. Whatever it takes to sort out your life. I won't keep bailing you out if you continue down this path." Another nod, more hesitant this time. "And thirdly," I paused, looking at the baby, now sleeping peacefully again despite the turmoil around him. "Leo, he deserves better than this, Clara. He deserves a mother who isn't using him as a bargaining chip. You need to prove you can be that mother. If you can't, or won't, then we'll need to discuss what's best for his future, and that might mean him not being with you." Her face crumpled. "I love him, Alara, I do." "Love isn't always enough, Clara. Sometimes it requires sacrifice, responsibility, things you've historically struggled with." My voice was harsh, but it needed to be. "This is your last chance, not just with me, but for yourself and for your son." The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, documents, and difficult conversations. My lawyer, Mr. Prosney Henderson, a stern but fair man who had been Marcus's attorney for years, was initially apoplectic about Clara's audacity and advised pressing charges. "Mrs. Vance," he'd said, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose, "this is a clear case of fraud. Your sister attempted to defraud the estate of millions. We should make an example of her." "And what happens to the child, Mr. Henderson?" I'd asked quietly. "A child who will grow up knowing his mother is in prison, his aunt put her there, and his early life was mired in a sordid scandal about his paternity." He'd conceded the point, though reluctantly. We drafted the documents. Clara signed them, her hand trembling. I paid off her immediate, most dangerous debts, the money transferred directly to the lenders, not through her hands. She agreed to therapy and financial counseling, though I had my doubts about her commitment. The hardest part was the baby, Leo. Every time I looked at him, I saw not Marcus, but the depth of my sister's betrayal. Yet, he was also just a baby, innocent and vulnerable. Clara, for all her faults, did show a maternal tenderness towards him, albeit one overshadowed by her chaotic life. I set up a trust for Leo, a small one, managed by an independent trustee, for his education and well-being, accessible only under strict conditions that Clara had to meet regarding her own stability and responsible parenting. It wasn't the $50 million she dreamed of, not even close, but it was a safety net for the child, a way for me to ensure he wouldn't suffer entirely for his mother's mistakes, without enabling Clara further. It was Marcus's money, after all, and I knew he, despite everything, would have wanted the child to be protected. The day Clara left my house, baby Leo in her arms, her expression was unreadable. There was shame, yes, but also a flicker of resentment. Our relationship, already strained for years, felt irrevocably broken. Perhaps it was for the best. "Thank you, Alara," she said, her voice flat, as she stood in the doorway. "Take care of him, Clara," I replied, my gaze on Leo. "And take care of yourself. This is it. There are no more lifelines from me." She nodded and walked away, not looking back. I closed the door, the silence of the house pressing in on me once more, but this time, it felt different. The raw, agonizing grief for Marcus was still there, a constant companion. But the additional layer of shock and betrayal from Clara's actions had, in a strange way, clarified things. It had forced me to act, to take control, to protect Marcus's legacy and, in doing so, to start navigating my own future. I walked back into the living room and sat in Marcus's armchair. It still smelled faintly of him, a comforting scent of old books and his favorite sandalwood cologne. I thought of his laughter, his quiet strength, his unwavering integrity. He would have been appalled by Clara's scheme, but he also would have been pragmatic. He would have wanted to protect what he'd built, and he would have, perhaps reluctantly, acknowledged the need to deal with Clara in a way that minimized further damage. The knowledge that he couldn't have children had been our shared secret, a quiet sorrow that had bound us closer. It was a truth that, in the end, had protected his memory and his legacy from my sister's desperate greed. My laughter that day, when Clara had made her outrageous claim, had been genuine. It was the laugh of someone who knew an impossible truth, a secret so profound it rendered the lie utterly absurd. It was the laugh that had cut through the fog of grief, even for a moment, and allowed me to see the path forward. Alone in the quiet house, I picked up a framed photo of Marcus and me, taken on our last anniversary. We were smiling, happy. "Oh, Marcus," I whispered, tracing his face with my fingertip. "You wouldn't believe the circus, but don't worry, I handled it." A small, sad smile touched my lips. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but I would walk it. For Marcus, and now, for myself. The laughter was gone, replaced by a quiet resolve. My husband could not have kids, and that simple, painful truth had been my shield and my sword, and in the end, it had been enough. A few months later, Mr. Henderson contacted me. "Mrs. Vance, there's a slight complication, or rather, an update regarding your sister." I braced myself. "What now, Mr. Henderson?" "It seems Miss Thorne, your sister, has been making inquiries, not about the estate, thankfully. She appears to be attempting to locate the biological father of her child, Leo." "Really?" I was surprised. That was a step towards responsibility I hadn't anticipated. Why the change of heart? From what my investigator discreetly gathered, her therapy is having some effect, and the reality of raising a child alone, without the prospect of a windfall, has perhaps focused her mind. She mentioned wanting Leo to have a chance to know his father, and potentially, for the father to contribute to his upbringing. "Well," I said, a strange mix of relief and skepticism swirling within me. "That's unexpectedly mature of her." Indeed, the loan sharks are no longer an issue. She's attending her counseling sessions. The trust for Leo remains untouched and conditional, as per your instructions. It seems, for now, she is adhering to the terms of your agreement. "Good," I said. "Let's hope it lasts." Life settled into a new rhythm. The sharp edges of grief began to soften, though the ache of Marcus's absence remained. I threw myself into managing Marcus's charitable foundation, something we'd planned to do together in our retirement. It gave me purpose, a way to channel his generosity and vision into tangible good. Nearly a year after that dreadful confrontation, I received a handwritten letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Clara's, neater than I remembered. "Dear Elara, I know thank you isn't enough, and sorry feels hollow after what I did. But I am trying. Leo is thriving. He's walking now, and he has this mischievous grin that reminds me, well, it's just his own. I found his biological father, Kevin. He was shocked, of course. He's not a bad man, just irresponsible, like me. We're figuring things out. He wants to be involved, and he started contributing, which helps more than you know. He's no millionaire, but he's present. Therapy is hard. Facing up to all my mistakes, it's ugly, but I'm doing it. For Leo, and for myself, I guess. I don't expect you to forgive me. Maybe not ever. But I wanted you to know that your intervention, as harsh as it felt, might have actually saved me. And it definitely saved Leo from a life built on a terrible lie. I hope you're doing okay. I think about Marcus. He was a good man. I'm so sorry I tried to tarnish that. Clara." I put the letter down, a complex emotion washing over me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something, a tiny crack of light in the wall of resentment I'd built. Clara was taking responsibility, not just for Leo, but for her own life. The path she'd chosen, attempting to defraud me, had been born of desperation and a lifetime of poor choices. My firm stance, backed by the undeniable truth of Marcus's infertility and, crucially, his vasectomy, had been the only thing that could have stopped her. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very fact that had once caused Marcus and me such private pain, his inability to have children, had become the unshakable foundation of truth that protected his legacy and, perhaps, even set my sister on a different, more honest path. I looked again at Marcus's photo. The laughter I'd felt that day was long gone, replaced by a profound understanding of the complexities of life, loss, and family. My husband couldn't have kids. And because of that, a web of deceit had been unraveled, and a small, innocent child might just have a chance at a life untainted by his mother's most desperate gamble. The 100 million was secure, destined for the causes Marcus believed in and for my own future. But more importantly, Marcus's name remained unsullied, his integrity intact. And that, I knew, was a victory far greater than any monetary sum. The truth, however painful, had indeed set us all free in its own unexpected way.